would say the socio-political environment then, the cultural environment, these sorts of figures like Bob Dylan or James Baldwin or Joan Baez and Pete Seeger and these great thinkers and stuff, there was no precedent for that in a way. And there was an optimism and a sincerity to the ethical value of their work, to the point that Bob got so appraised that it freaked him out in some way, or creeped him out, and he went off to make other kinds of music. And I think today, not only are the problems that my generation and the younger generation faces more intense. I thought you were going on your phone. He's so bored, man. But I'd never watch. Oh, let me get back to the, challenges my generation faces. The phone. But I think that the challenges are greater, and also I think there's probably a cynicism. Like, I think things are maybe perhaps so jaded now that if someone tried to make a political song that reflected, the challenges faced today, people might roll their eyes in a sense or go, okay, what's your real motive here? But maybe somebody will do it. That's not to be cynical too. Maybe someone will break through the frame. That's not the environment right now, though.
A lot of the, let me turn this down so I don't hear myself in Italian. I feel like, of course, history repeats itself, and I think a lot of what Bob Dylan's lyrics were saying had to do with, there are some songs where he literally points at a specific war and a time and people. With God on Our Side is very specific. But a lot of the songs, as Jim first pointed out to me, there is kind of a vagueness there. And also, they can just kind of land on human hypocrisy and just how we sort of, and with God on Our Side included, just this idea that, we forgive our own behavior, but what are we really doing to others in the world, and why do we think this way? And I know, I feel that's what Joan really fell in love with in terms of his writing. Just that he was willing to point the finger, but still, it's not necessarily always specifically about, let's say, World War II or whatever. So I think I think those issues are timeless, and I think that is why his music still resonates today. I also think that there is a lot of social commentary today. There's so much in rap music, for sure. And it's whether you're, tuning into it and paying attention to it. Plenty of people weren't paying attention to Bob Dylan and had no interest at the time. But his voice has lasted because I think he was, or at these songs specifically, because he was saying something, and they draw in a certain type of crowd and
a posture. But apart from that, to be honest, what you're referencing things that are talking about his significance and folk music, and I think our director here is a really terrific director, but he's also a great psychotherapist, and he told all of us, he said, just abandon the history, abandon the weight of the reputation and the place in our cultural history, and let's just deal with a person who meets a young person that he admires and wants to support. And let's deal with, people who fall in love but are still competitive with each other. Let's deal with basic human relationship interactions. That's where we build the stakes and forget about the rest. And that was very liberating, I think, for all of us, to be liberated from the weight of all that you were referring to. You can't act that stuff, and so, but it's great to have the person at the helm saying to you, let that go,
My job as a director is always to question the obvious observation, because to make a scene interesting, there has to be more than the obvious, right? So I question just that thesis. I think we all make up our lives. I think everyone here makes up their lives, forgets the shit that hurts them, emphasizes their heroic nature, in whatever their triumphs are, and minimizes or sees themselves as a victim in their failures. That's human nature. It's how we survive. It's how we don't get overwhelmed with depression. We make our mistakes disappear, and our triumphs feel even more triumphant. I see the way we, and so in another way, as a storyteller myself, I recognize there is no ultimate truth. There just isn't. And for all of us who prepared on this movie, you know, I talked to Dylan himself, but we've read every account by authors, by journalists, timelines, documentaries. They all contradict one another. The documentaries are movies of people who know they're on camera, who are performing even though they're backstage. The biographies are testimonies from different characters, each putting themselves at the center of the story and framing out their errors and highlighting their achievements. So the
cultural lessons or political lessons or like the social lessons that come from Bob Dylan's early work, and I would say more if there's any lesson for youth, it's you know, an embrace of individuality, an embrace of a personal creative spirit and creative liberty and who you find yourself to be, because you know, Bob Dylan literally found his name. He found his art, he found his expression, and he was a fabulist, and he had several origin stories, and at one point he was Blind Boy Grunt, and at one point he was Robert Zimmerman, and then he, you know, landed on Bob Dylan. So I think the non-evident lesson, at least the one I would take, is one of self-creation, and not to be limited by what is so limiting to most of us intuitively, which is to think, oh, I am who I've been, you know. And secondly, what was the second thing? I can't remember.
Cosa ha
Oh,
ritrovato
my
in
own,
se
yeah, my own
stesso,
personal
se ha
connection.
trovato
Yeah,
qualcosa
none at
di
all,
se stesso
man,
nel
none at all.
personaggio.
No, man, no. I mean, you know, I feel like in the process of making it, I always talk about this D.A. Pennebaker movie, Don't Look Back, and you know, as Jim so beautifully said, there's the exterior work you're doing that's not like the interior work. As far as the exterior work I was doing, I was so hyper-focused on the visuals from that documentary and all the footage I could find that were like imprinted on my soul. And I would say I found more of myself after the fact than during. That's to say that he's a huge influence day to day now. And Edward and I speak about this a lot, you know, of how you want to conduct yourself, you know, in settings like this. And I think it's a different media landscape now, and a different, like, I think if you get the opportunity to be in movies or make music and the opportunity to talk about it, it's just a different thing. So I'm happy.
Yeah, I mean, similarly, it's hard not to get in your head about how accurate you want to be. And of course, there are, you know, avid Joan fans out there who want to see someone who's really recognizable to them, and maybe even a part of sort of donning that character is like, it does have elements of impersonation in a way, because you want to come up with something that is really recognizably that person. But at a certain point, I mean, Joan said it so beautifully in an article that I read while I was working on this, that if you try to make something too perfect, you rob it of what makes it really interesting. And so, you know, the worst thing in the world I could have done to someone as spirited and wonderful as Joan would be to just try to get her so accurate that she had no personality. So it was really helpful to have Jim encourage us to not try to